Hi everyone, thanks so much for tuning in today. This is Kathy. Today I'm sharing the first of 3 videos featuring the Which Way is the Candy stamp set from My Favorite Things. Really excited about this set. It's got super cute images and some great sentiments to go along with it. And let's get started. For the first card, I wanted to have the little frog sitting on the smaller pumpkin. I stamped it out on a piece of scratch paper first, just to get an idea of the layout, and I used it as a guide so I would know where to stamp the frog on the cardstock. I am stamping on 80-pound Nina Solar White cardstock. I am using Memento Tuxedo Black ink because both of those are very Copic friendly, and there's going to be a whole lot of Copic coloring going on. After I stamped the frog down on the cardstock, I covered him up with a mask, and I used the small pumpkin mask as a guide, again to help with placement, so I would know where to stamp that small pumpkin that he's sitting on. I'm currently out of my masking tape, so what I used was just sticky notes. And if I didn't get the sticky part on the back to make sure that it stuck down good on the cardstock, I just used my Zig 2-way glue pen and added a little bit of glue to the back of the mask, and I let it dry first. By doing that, it turns into a repositionable glue, which is quite handy when it comes to masking and you're out of masking paper. And you don't necessarily have to use sticky notes either. You can use just regular old copy paper or any scratch paper that you may have. Once I had all of the stamping done, I'm going to start doing all of my coloring, and I will list the individual colors over on the blog. I'll be sure to link to the blog post below. Well, unless of course you're watching this on the blog, in which case just scroll down a little bit, and I'll list them out, what colors I use specifically for the frogs and for the pumpkins. And in the meantime, I'll go ahead and I'll just leave you with some music while I finish up the coloring. To finish up this card, I just cut a piece of the diagonal striped paper from the Black and White Basics 6x6 paper pack from My Favorite Things, only I didn't want it to be black and white. I wanted it to be orange and black. So I used my Carved Pumpkin Distress Oxide ink to blend over that paper to change the color a bit. One thing I probably should have mentioned is that the white cardstock that I stamped the frog and pumpkins on measured 4 by 5 1/4. And when I cut down this patterned piece, I cut it slightly wider than 4 inches so I could have a little bit of wiggle room for placement when I put it on the white card piece there with the stamped images. Once I had that all inked up and I clean off my mat, I adhere it to the white panel with the frog and pumpkins, and I used the Tombow Multi-Mono liquid glue. And again, I cut that diagonal patterned paper slightly wider just so that I could have a little bit of wiggle room so I could figure out where it was that I wanted to have it placed on the cardstock there. Once I had that where I wanted it, after I adhered it, I just trimmed it down with a paper trimmer and just cut off the excess. The black strip there, just a piece of scratch paper or scrap paper that I had just trimmed down just to soften up well, not really soften up, but just to add a border between the white cardstock and the patterned cardstock. And once I had that adhered down, I also trimmed off the excess there. And I noticed when I was getting ready to put it on the black panel there that I didn't get the patterned paper lined up quite right. So I just inked it up with the carved pumpkin just to get rid of that white edge. The black panel measures 4 1/8 by 5 3/8. And then I adhere that to a top folding white A2 card. Once I did that, I figured out what I wanted to do with the sentiment. I have a frog in my throat, which seems appropriate being that I have a frog sitting on a pumpkin, right? So I stamped it onto a piece of white scrap cardstock, same cardstock the Nina and the Memento ink, and I just cut the edge there at an angle and adhered that down with my liquid glue. And that finishes up card 1. For card number 2, I used the witch and the frog, and there's some masking going on, which you'll see later on. In the meantime, I'm just going to go ahead and leave you with some music again while I finish up the coloring here. after I had finished all the coloring, I went ahead and trimmed that panel down quite a bit. Then I inked the edges with the Memento Tuxedo black ink, just to add a little something around the edge. I didn't want to have to actually mount it on another piece of cardstock because I didn't want to cover up too much of that spider web background, which I actually cut from my Cricut. The image is called the Spiderweb Placemat, and it's from Anna's Seasonal Soirees cartridge. And to adhere that to my card, which is a lime green top folding A2 sized card, I just used a ballpoint glue pen around the edge and then just dotted a little bit with the Tombow liquid glue. Kind of placed my hand over that to hold it in place for a bit. And then I just adhered the stamped panel down using my liquid glue again. And that finishes up card number 2. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll be back soon with cards 3 and 4. See you then.